morning and welcome back to the lecture series. So, we are discussing fiction and different modes of narrative. Our onus is on epic and novel as the two genres. We have studied the two genres in comparison with one another from the perspective of Georg Lukács. Today we are going to talk about Mikhail Bakhtin's essays titled Dialogic Imagination, where he is comparing epic and novel. So, according to Bakhtin, novel is a peculiar genre that continues to develop and it is never completed, it's never an organic whole. Development of a novel is very unpredictable, and so what will happen next or the possibilities in the future cannot be foretold. Other genres have fixed pre-existing forms in which artists pour in their experience. Novel, on the other hand, as a genre or as a form, or happen as a result of historically documented observations. Contrarily, we see that epic is an antiquated genre where development is already complete and nothing more can happen. Possibilities are thereby closed in an epic, but the novel is necessarily the reflection of the modern world, a new world which is characterized by polyphony, characterized by polyglossic texture. A polyglossic texture is a characteristic of the novel. So there are different layers, different perspectives, different meanings and inter-illumination. All of these characterize the novel. Similar to epic, we see in tragedy also there is a hardened skeleton, in other words, a hardened framework from which one cannot deviate too much. In a classic Greco-Roman tragedy, the stages are typically, we know, first we have the exposition or setting of the mood, and then a rising action followed by peripetia, which is a sudden change in situation, followed by hamartia or tragic flaw, which leads to some kind of conflict, anagnosis or recognition, crisis or reversal, falling action or catastrophe. Then we have pity and fear, which all leads to catharsis on the part of the audience. So, epic and tragedy both precede the written tradition. They necessarily belong to the oral tradition. They flourished at a time when oral tradition, oral culture was prevalent. So, in strict dactylic hexameter, each of the feet would be a dactyl meaning one long and two short syllables, but classical meter allows for the substitution of a spondy or two long syllables in place of a dactyl in most positions. So, the first 4 feet can either be dactyls or spondies more or less freely. However, the 5th foot is frequently a dactyl. Now, because these rhymes and rhythms are also prefixed, we know how after 4 dactyls one spondy comes. So, after 4 dactyls or spondies, there has to be the 5th foot as dactyl. These ancient genres retain an auditory characteristic. The lyricality is very important. Tragedy and epic are not meant to be read alone. It's not a lonely affair in any way, not in terms of reading experience, not in terms of what is happening within the frame of the text to the characters. It's always a community affair. It is meant to be read aloud. It's a verse. It has the poetic quality. Uh, Contrarily, the classic novel, has no generic canon as such, but only individual examples. So we cannot have some parameters within which a novel can be inscribed. Novel always tends to outgrow these parameters and form newer and newer definitions, while other genres are written in a dead language or something. Or this is something Mikhail Bakhtin has to say. He says, tragedy and no epic are written in dead language. Novel is very much alive and young, and Bakhtin would say that it's the only developing genre. So, novel belongs to the era of world history, whereas other older genres that are already fixed cannot be associated immediately with contemporaneity. In the era of novelization, older genres adapt to the new conditions of their existence that have been brought forth by the novel. Prior to novel, other genres would form a harmonious organic unity uh, through reinforcing each other. And novel cannot enter this whole and participate in harmony with the older genres. So it is kind of an outcast if we attempt a generic study vis-a-vis epic and tragedy. The novel is an outcast. Only genres with well-defined contours or characteristics can enter such an organic whole of literatures that are already hierarchically organized. The older genres can mutually complement and delimit each other while preserving their own generic traits or generic natures, because there is a deep underlying structure that is common in all of them. So, tragedy has this skeleton from which it does not deviate too much. There are certain stages through which the tragic hero has to journey to experience the no exit situation. Similarly, epic has a world view to which it subscribes. Novel has no such parameters. It's constantly making and unmaking its parameters. Bakhtin argues that all the older genres resultantly ignore the novel, the developing, experimenting young genre. The novel parodies other genres. It exposes the conventionality, the ossification that has happened in the forms and languages of the older genres, and drawing traits from other genres, it reformulates and re-accentuates them. So, in the era where novel becomes the dominant genre, all literature is caught up in the process of becoming. There is a necessary novelization of the other genres. They are engaged in generic criticism. This is one phenomenon that mainly began in the second half of the 18th century. So, when novel reigns supreme in the era of novelization, other genres are more or less novelized. So, other genres, for example, drama, epic poetry, lyric poetry, they all attain, they all, emulate novels' traits in some way or the other. So, parodic stylizations of canonized genre and styles occupy an essential place in the novel. In the era of the novel's creative ascendancy, and even more so in the periods that preceded this era, in the periods of preparation, periods that led to the era of novel, literature was flooded with parodies and travesties of all the high genres. So, parodies, however, of the generic form and not of individual authors or individual schools. So, parodies were targeting the generic characteristics. Seen in this way, one could very well say that parodies are the precursors, they are the companions, they are the harbingers of the novel as a form, as a genre. Uh, but it is characteristic that the novel does not permit any of the various manifestations to stabilize or to stay on for too long. So, the novel's aim remains at stylization or experimentation of every other genre, taken to the point of parody and travesty, or all the traditional features associated with epic poetry, lyric poetry, all the traditional features associated with epic poetry or lyric poetry are experimented with, made to stand on their head, turned upside down, and so forth. So, Bakhtin notes that the novel has become the leading hero in the drama of literary development precisely because it best reflects the tendencies of a new world which is still in the making. After all, novel is the only genre that is born of this new world. It is an offshoot, it is a result of this new world, and in total affinity with it, bearing all the symptoms, the entire essence of this new world. In many respects, the novel has anticipated and continues to anticipate the future development of literature as a whole. And in the process of becoming the dominant genre, the novel enables the renovation of all other genres. It infects, like I already said, the other genres with its own spirit of inconclusiveness, indeterminism, and the process of seeking, the process of becoming and staying open-ended in a way. The novel draws other genres into its orbit precisely because this orbit coincides with the basic direction of the development of literature as a whole. So, the era of novelization greatly enabled, greatly facilitated the development, the evolution of world literature. So, in this process lies the exceptional contribution or significance of the novel, so as an object of study for the theory as well as the history of literature. So, for theorization as well as historicization of literature, the contribution, the significance of novel can never be denied. So, unfortunately, historians of literature usually reduce this struggle between the novel and other already completed genres, right? The historians tend to connect these different aspects of novel, the aspects of novelization, the tendency of novelization to the actual real life struggle among different schools and different trends, the parodization, the travesty, the restyling is never meant to attack any school or any trend. It is just a playing with, shuffling the generic purity of the older genres. For example, we see that the literary historians call the novelized poem as a romantic poem, which of course it is. However, such tagging is not very worthy. inasmuch as it tends to exhaust the subject. If it is a romantic poem, does it not have any other possibility? That is a shortcoming of literary history when trying to tag a work through a certain specific trait. So, according to Bakhtin, beneath the superficial hustle and bustle of literary process, there are major fates of literature and language. The great heroes of literature are first and foremost the genres themselves, whereas the trends and the schools are only second or third rank protagonists, right? So, the onus of experimentation is on the genre and not on the trends or the schools. That comes second or third uh, when we are talking about experimentation, when we are talking about novelization. Language of the canonical genres in the era of novelization sound different from the era when novel itself was not considered as a part of high literature. So, novel, like I have already mentioned, does not allow any of its various manifestations to stabilize. Novel does not stop at parodying older genres, it parodies itself too, very much so. The ability of the novel to criticize itself, to parody, subvert its own former values, former avatars or manifestations is a sign of its ever developing nature. So, modern novel is happening through parodying of chivalric romance, baroque novel, pastoral novel, sentimental novel, all of this within the purview of the novel and the process of novelization. So, when we look at chivalric romance, we refer to prose or verse narrative that was popular in the aristocratic circles of high medieval and early modern Europe, and they typically describe the adventures of a quest seeking legendary knight. And this knight is portrayed in terms of certain stock heroic traits. Baroque novel refers to the Baroque style, which is characterized by exaggeration, exaggerated emotion, and a clear detail that produces drama, exuberance, and grandeur. This grandeur and exuberance could be in the form of literature or even fine arts, sculpture, painting, dance, and music. So, Baroque iconography was direct, uh, too dramatic, and it intended to appeal above all to the senses and the emotions. Similarly, pastoral novel is a mode of literature that employs different techniques to place the complex life into a simpler one. The presence of the pastoral element in literature, in art, or music depicts life in an idealized manner, away from the hustle and bustle of urban existence, and it is typically meant to as it has a balming effect, almost a therapeutic balming effect, a kind of beaconing light for urban audiences, a kind of getaway for urban audience as the ideal becomes the kind of beaconing light, like I said. So, then we have the sentimental novel, which is broadly uh, a form that exploits the reader's capacity for tenderness, compassion, sympathy, almost to a disproportionate, exaggerated degree. The modern novel, comments on, parodies, and reshuffles the values of each of these trends in novelistic tradition itself. So, with novelization, other genres become freer and more flexible. Language becomes more dialogized. Uh, it attains more layers, more perspectives, and it is obviously permeated with laughter, irony, self parody, humor, and so on. And it involves a kind of open endedness, indeterminacy in the contemporary times. So, because novel is still developing, still experimenting, it can comprehend development and as a new genre. So, because novel is developing, it can comprehend development as a process, and being a new genre that it is, novel speaks and renovates all genres. It speaks about renovation of all genres, passing on a spirit of lack of pattern to all these older genres. So, the novel is especially interested in those normative definitions of the novel that are offered by different novelists that produce a specific novel and then declare it as the only correct, necessary, and authentic form of novel. So, novel is constantly uh, gazing or looking into its own eyes and kind of critiquing itself. We have instances of Rousseau's foreword to his La Nouvelle Heloise, violence to his Agathon, whistles to his Tobias Nauts, uh, and also several declarations and statements of principle by the Romantics on Wilhelm Meister, Lucinda, as well as other texts. So, this foreword defies the cause, defies the motive of novel. When one writer says that, look, I have written this and this is uh, the definitive, version that one must follow when writing a novel. This is a kind of preamble for writing a novel. It kind of defies uh, the cause of the novel, which is to constantly move away from, flow out of any kind of definition. So, such forewords probably do more disservice than service to the cause and to the motivation, to the motive of novel. So, these statements may not be seen as attempts at incorporating all the possible variants of the novel into a single eclectic or one of its kind definition. Rather, one could also see these forewords, these preambles or statements as part and parcel of the living evolution that novel as a genre epitomizes and stands for. With this, I'm going to stop our lecture today, and I'll meet you again with another round of discussions in another lecture. Thank you.